And that's what the prosecutor points out and says, this guy's a liar.
We're the arms attorneys. Today we're talking about the top 4 things we see in real life that absolutely kill your self-defense claim by essentially giving the state all the evidence they need to prove that you weren't really in fear for your life. Before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button. And I think we also have just a little note here before we get rolling, Richard.
That is right. We have some changes coming to the channel. First and foremost, we are building out a pretty nice new set for y'all. This should boost up the production value just a little bit, make it a little bit easier to watch, and hopefully the content just a little bit more engaging. The second big change we have coming is some sponsorships. Now, I cannot say enough how eternally grateful we are for all of our channel members, all of our patrons. Y'all have really made this channel what it is so far, but we're ready to take it to the next level to get this important 2A news, self-defense simplified, and firearms frequently asked questions to get more of that to y'all. And part of that is partnering with folks who share our values. So in the future, you might see some ad reads on the channel. This is all for y'all's benefit, and support those people who support us. That's really how this whole system works, and we really appreciate you. We're so grateful for you. We're grateful for our sponsors to come.
Yes, thank you for your patience. I know that listening to an ad read might not be, your most favorite thing in the world, but we want to spend more and more time on this channel, more and more time providing really good content to you guys. And so, unfortunately, that takes away from our law practice. I know you guys know how dollars and cents work, so we really appreciate your patience with that.
But let's get started talking about the 4, we'll call them stupid things that we see show up in our cases that really kill these self-defense claims. And I think we got 4 of them. The first one that I want to talk about is leaving cover, or leaving concealment sometimes, if you're hidden, but leaving cover. What do you see in your cases?
Yes. So, and, I think we can, this is a big deal for us here in Texas, but it's a great example throughout the country. We had a gentleman actually within a mile or 2 of our office here by the name of Joe Horn get in a self-defense incident. If you're a Texan, I know you're familiar with this case, but if you're not, just a quick breakdown. He knew his neighbors were out of town. His neighbors had sort of asked him to keep an eye out on things. He sees people breaking into his neighbor's home. He calls 911. 911 is so explicit. Don't go out there. Don't go out there. He knows his neighbors aren't there. He knows that no one is in physical danger. And he goes out there and he shoots them. Now, luckily, there was information presented to the grand jury about some imminent threats that he encountered, and the grand jury no-billed him. But it really, really, really hurt his self-defense allegations initially that he left his cover. He left his home, he left his castle, and he sort of went out there to initiate this incident. Particularly if you're in one of your castles, it really cuts against you being in fear that you go out to the incident where you then have to use deadly force and defend yourself.
Yeah, and I think what this distills down to in most cases is juries like to see self-defenders take reasonable, safe alternatives. In some states there's no legal duty to retreat. We have stand your ground. But if there's a reasonable self-alternative to engaging, juries just love that, and leaving cover is one of those things that we see pop up over and over. The next one that we want to talk about is escalating the conflict. And the reason this comes up so much, we just had 2 recent incidents of this where it really is going to undermine these self-defense cases. Should they, maybe some of these people aren't even charged with crimes, but should they get charged with crimes? Now, I think both of ours are road rage.
Yes, which is, by the way, just do everything you can to avoid road rage, because it is 85% or more of our self-defense docket are these road rage cases. It is where you are going to get yourself charged. Do everything you can. I know that you didn't start the road rage and it was not your fault, but you've still got to be the bigger person. All right, so go on, Richard.
Yeah, so I'll say my self-defense case first. It was a road rage, people cutting each other off, brake checking each other, fighting on the highway. If this case goes to trial, what will become an issue is escalating and following this guy, essentially, because they had one kind of transaction where the other person pulled a knife on him. If he had defended himself right then and there, man, that probably would have been a great self-defense case. But what happened in our case, our defender ran back to his vehicle and then proceeded to chase the knife wielder to a second location, at which point then a self-defense incident occurred where maybe a knife was not brandished. And so police have these kind of difficulties of separating out. I mean, they're just going to look at that second incident. They're not going to look at all the lead up. They're not going to look at the first incident. They're not going to look at the knife pull. They're going to look at that second transaction and try to, piece together, why were you afraid again? And I think there's going to be some question marks.
Oh, and that's a big part of mine that I want to convey to you, which is if you follow the person who you are in this interaction with, you have completely cut out your fear of that person. Because from the police perspective, what do we not do? Pursue someone we are horribly afraid of,
right?
Correct? So this happens a lot in road rage, but it can happen in other situations too. I will tell you, do not follow the person who has aggrieved you, because then if you have to get into a deadly force incident with them, it is going to be extraordinarily difficult to then establish that you are the good guy with clean hands who was just afraid for his life. And again, we talk about these sort of separating out pieces of the transaction. I understand that you can pursue someone, you're not really that afraid of them, but then they come out and they do something and you have this fear. But it is just really, really tough because you need to start establishing, like Richard said, the reasonable, safe alternatives. You need to establish those clean hands for the jury as early as possible.
And these show up in a couple of different scenarios. The road rage, following someone in a bar, chest bumping somebody, going up and escalating things. Or I see this a lot on social media too. Somebody will threaten someone on social media over text or by phone, and then the aggrieved person will go to their house. And then it's very difficult to say, I was afraid. Well, they're talking to you on the phone. They're talking to you at a distance. They're posting things on Facebook. And then you go to them. It kind of undermines that. Yeah. The next one that comes up, and I think you've had experience with this not too long ago either, is kind of just outright saying you're not afraid.
A lot of people do this. You would be surprised. You're talking to the police generally about your incident, and for some reason, you undermine all the things that you need to tell them about why you used self-defense, why you had a reasonable fear that someone was coming at you with unlawful force or deadly force. You might say things like, well, he did this, but I just laughed at him. I've even had people, and I think it's sort of like a braggadocious thing to the police. Well, I wasn't that scared, or, I've trained for situations like this. I wasn't that worried. It is really, really harmful to your case because, again, you have to establish, if you've just killed someone in self-defense, you have to establish fear for your life. Now, those aren't the words we recommend that you use. We have whole videos on that.
Yep.
But you have to establish that you believed you were about to be killed. And if you say that you used deadly force because you believe you were about to be killed, and then you say, but I wasn't even worried about him, that has completely undermined your entire element of your self-defense case.
Yeah, and I see this come up. I'm going to rag on social media again. If you've been involved in a self-defense incident or you're charged with a crime, don't talk to anybody about the case, not the police, not your friends and family. And for God's sakes, don't post anything on social media, because this comes up frequently where people will, have an account of what happened and, demonstrate kind of their toughness and all those things. They do that on social media. And when that gets compared to the police statement or maybe an interview with a detective or, maybe the incident was captured on video, I bet your characterization on social media might be a little bit embellished compared to those things. And that's what the prosecutor points out and says, this guy's a liar. And so you got to be very, very careful. Don't brag about your self-defense case, saying you're not afraid. That will kill it. Now, the last one that comes up is not calling 911. This one kind of surprises folks.
We have a lot of people who we talk to who get in these incidents. They call us later and they say, well, I never called law enforcement because I stopped the threat, right? Maybe they just exhibited a deadly weapon, threat went away, transaction is over, right? But let's say that person calls the police, the actual aggressor calls the police.
Yeah, they know how the system works.
They do. And they're going to say, this crazy man in a white shirt and glasses pulled a gun on me. I was just minding my own business. I don't know what his problem is. And the police are going to go and they're going to arrest Richard because Richard, although he was the one in legitimate fear, did not report it. So again, we also have entire videos on what to say and not to say on 911 calls. So that is very important, but also getting your story in as the victim, as the self-defender, whether or not you have just displayed a deadly weapon or if you've had to use it, is incredibly important.
Yeah. So, removing yourself from cover and concealment, escalating these things, outright saying you're not afraid and not calling 911. Those are all four big, stupid things we see show up in cases that undermine that underlying fear for life that we see show up in self-defense laws across the country. And it's critical you avoid these mistakes.
And people, it is so easy not to do these things. This isn't, really technical legalese or, picking apart the actual self-defense scenario second by second about what you should do and not do. These are easy things. Commit them to memory. Don't be the guy who makes these mistakes, because if you get charged with murder, it is so important that you not have. I know we say this over and over again. Anything can work against you when you are charged with murder. Tiny, tiny little things can add up to make a jury really not like you and not like the thing that you did. Put yourself in your best, your best position to present yourself to your potential jury, because everything matters.
Yeah, and there is maybe, out of those four, there's maybe one more that we see show up over and over and over again, and that's warning shots and how warning shots are looked at in self-defense contexts. Thankfully, we have an entire video on that right here. You gotta check that out.